Okay, I have, oh, you know what I need? I need a pointer. I don't have a pointer. Okay, actually, I can do it here. Never mind. Never mind. Now, you have to beat them up with a stick. You have a yardstick. Never mind. I can handle it. I'm gonna read the top of the new exclusive fire agency contract. It's all in red. It was never there. Betsy, look at what I've just been given to point with. My wife wouldn't let me bring my cane in because she said I'm gonna use it as a pointer.
And we just gave him one, Betsy, sorry. Somebody get a.
Okay. I got the exact same cane. You got it at CVS, I know, $29.99. I bought one too. I might as well. Okay, ready? All right, here we go. Top of the buyer agency contract. By the way, it's the exclusive buyer agency contract. Let me share with you a couple of things. There's a non-exclusive buyer agency contract. You've had it for years. There's no longer a exclusive buyer / tenant agency contract. We now have created a separate tenant agency contract.
That was good.
Okay, that's good. Yes, we'll have to stay in Delaware. I'm in Delaware too. Drive me crazy. They do things differently. They copied Pennsylvania when they made their change just in the past month. And they thought it was a great idea to have a buyer / tenant agency contract. That's what they did. They had their two contracts and combined them into one. We took our one contract and split it.
Hopefully they're not calling it a park.
Now they're calling it a dog farm. But anyway, so here's what the exclusive buyer agency contract says. It's good words. Ready? A buyer agent owes duties of loyalty and confidentiality to a buyer and must act in buyer's best interest. That's the definition of buyer agency. Along with those 6 fiduciary duties: obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, reasonable care, and diligence. If a consumer chooses to purchase property without hiring a buyer agent, that consumer will not have a real estate licensee looking out for their interest in the transaction. Isn't that what you tell buyers? You need me. Okay, you need someone looking out for your interest. Now, the next sentence, the middle one, is not on the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. This first one that I just read is also on the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. Here's the next sentence. In an exclusive, by the way, I'm not sharing my screen, so they can't see this at home. Did you make me co-host? Oh, boy, oh, boy. Okay. In an exclusive buyer agency contract, you agree that you will work only with one buyer agent for a certain time period, and that you could owe a broker's fee to this broker if you purchase a property during the contract time period. Contacting another broker agent and using their services during the term of this contract could mean that you might owe fees to more than one broker. Okay? That's basically on your current buyer agency contract. But we elaborated those words. Next paragraph. Do not sign this contract until you have read the entire document and discussed any questions with the agent. If you have further questions about the contract, you can also discuss them with the agent's broker. Jim? Joanna, get ready. Okay. And if you have legal questions, you're advised to consult a Pennsylvania real estate attorney, not a New Mexico real estate attorney. My brother-in-law's an attorney. Yeah, where is he? He's in New Mexico. Well, he doesn't know Pennsylvania law. Okay. I'm now co-host. Oh, now you make my life. Now I got to figure out how to share screen. I got to go in here to Zoom. Where is Zoom? Zoom. Which one of these is Zoom? Zoom right there. Okay. Okay, I got to sign in now. Okay, I'm an administrator. I'm going to hit share screen. How do I get to the bottom of my, over here?
Yeah,
Here. Click that. Okay, click this one. Here we go. We're going to go more. We're going to go to share screen. And we're going to share that screen.
Yeah.
And I got to click on that one though, and then hit share. Okay, there we go. Okay, you all at home, you're getting to see the buyer agency contract in red. Okay, so the third paragraph at the top is do not sign this contract I read. Unless you consult the Pennsylvania real estate attorney. When we get to this, now, let's talk about while we're here, the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. Non-exclusive buyer agency contract used to only be 2 pages, it was easy. Now it's a 5-page document, just like the exclusive. What is the difference between the new exclusive buyer agency contract and the non-exclusive buyer agency contract? They both have the commission amount filled in, hopefully 3%. Okay, the old non-exclusive buyer agency contract didn't have any place to fill it in. Because the old one said we're gonna take what's ever given to us by the other broker through the MLS. That's illegal according to the settlement agreement. Now, you can't define your fee as whatever you can get. Gotta be an ascertainable amount, such as 3% or $10,000. It's gotta be there. Okay? So what's the difference between the exclusive and non-exclusive agency contract? The difference is the exclusive agency contract, the one we have on the screen, has an expiration date, an ending date, as we call it. Okay. And it also obligates the buyer to work only with you and with no other brokerage companies. You with me? Okay. Whereas the non-exclusive contract has the X%, the 3% filled in, but it has no starting or ending date. It only applies to houses you show them. You can even write addresses in on it. It says the following addresses and any other properties we show you. But you're going to owe us 3% if you buy one of those properties. And this contract has no ending date. And you're not obligated to work only with us. You can go see houses with other real estate companies and other real estate agents. That's the non-exclusive. We don't care whether you sign an exclusive or non-exclusive. You have to have one of the two signed in the file for compliance before you show a house.
Non-exclusive buyer's agency was signed. I showed them 123 Main Street.
Right.
They worked with another agent and decided to buy 123 Main Street.
They are your commission.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
They come back and buy the house you showed them. They are your commission.
So
That's what
in essence, non-exclusive agency will give you.
That's a good way of putting it. I'm not going to go heavy into that.
No.
Right. That's a good way. All right. So,
What if the buyer does not want you to get that fee?
then you
You
sue
look
them.
for private seconds.
Then you sue them if they don't pay.
Do we pay-
I successfully sued buyers who don't pay their fees up until now. I've done it, I'll do it again. It's gonna be more frequent in the future, yes.
Do we put the lien or does
Right, well, I can't stress this enough. This is not a new sentence. Ready? Line number 14, buyer understands that this exclusive buyer agency contract is between the broker and the buyer, not the agent and the buyer. Not the licensee and the buyer. The
Agent.
contract
Okay,
between the broker.
just FYI, Janet's thing is ready to be accepted in the house. So that's done, but I can't accept
Always needed to get the
a
change.
brokerage until she chooses. Go ahead.
Appoint
Oh,
yourself
look.
as a designated agent. It doesn't mean you're getting paid. It means you have the legal right to represent the buyer, or for that matter, the seller. If you're asking someone else to meet with your seller because you're on vacation and they're going to present the offer to the seller, they have to be appointed as a designated agent. Or you get Jim to do it, because Jim's the agent for every one of your buyers, and he's the agent for every one of your sellers, because he's the broker rep. Okay, when you sign a buyer agency contract, only you represent the buyer along with Jim. And when you sign a listing contract, only you represent the seller and Jim. Unless you're on a team, in which case you would fill in the names of every team member right here where it says licensee name. Don't get me off on the teams right now. We don't have time for that. Okay, so let's get to the main part of the form that changed. Okay, so here. What we need to look at is the bottom of the form, my favorite paragraph, called broker's fee. My favorite paragraph on the listing contract is called broker's fee. My favorite contract on the buyer agency contract is called broker's fee. My favorite line on the altar and the closing disclosure on the HUD one is the one where it says how much we're getting paid.
Amen.
Okay, amen. Okay, now, here's what it says. So, by the way, the old buyer agency contract met all the terms of this settlement. Provided you filled in the number, you couldn't leave it blank. Too many agents were taught that it's okay to leave it blank. Never taught by me that the blank was allowed. But you have to fill it in with that 3%. You want to do 2.5, you can. But be careful, if you do 2.5 and you get 3, you can't keep the extra 0.5%. Remember? And therein lies the only reason we needed to change the buyer agency contract. So when we started as a task force, we started with the easiest one, buyer agency contract. We had a buyer agency contract, which God bless us in Pennsylvania, we were using all the time. Some states didn't even have a buyer agency contract. We have done it, and we've trained well, at least here at Keller Williams Real Estate, to always get a buyer agency contract. But we never stressed before you show even a house. What you need to do before you show a house is know your scripts, have a buyer counseling session, hopefully here in the office or on Zoom, and then you need to allow them to give you at least an hour or more, just like you do a listing counseling session, a listing appointment. You need to spend the time with the buyers. It's critical now more than ever, because you're not going to meet someone on the curb and say, before we walk into that house, you got to sign this buyer agency contract with 3% filled in. How do you think that's going to go? Yeah, but maybe it'll be okay. Now I'm going in, I know I'm going in circles here. If it's a Keller Williams Northampton listing, you can say, just for this house, you can sign this buyer agency contract, and I'll put 0 in for your fee because we're getting paid as a listing brokerage company by the seller. If we know that. Which makes it easy for you to get the buyer agency contract signed on the curb. You gotta know what it is. Well, you're gonna before you run out and show it. They're not calling you at 4:45 and say, meet me at the house. They are, remember? But we have, but by the way, feel good about this. Here's what you can feel good about. You feel good about misery loves company. And you've got 1.5 million realtors in the United States. And they all have to do the same thing starting on August 17th.
That's comforting.
Not a whole lot of comfort, but some comfort. I'm going to share with you something personal. The attorneys that made us agree as an industry that we would only have a buyer agency contract signed or a buyer agreement, they're calling it, before we show any house. I think that's the gift of the settlement agreement. It's forcing us to do what we've always supposed to do. But the reason we didn't do it is because nobody else was doing it. Because sloppiness loves company. So if everybody else being sloppy, I can do it too. Okay, well, not anymore. Now, I'm going to tell you, I give a lot of thought to this. My wife doesn't even know this. I stay awake at night looking at the ceiling, thinking about these things. I believe that we're not going to sign buyer agency contracts before we show every house. I think that's wrong, and you better not. You were here telling you have to. But when you're showing a house to your sister, you're going to make her sign a contract for 3% before you walk in the door? Yes. But if you don't, and she wants to buy the house, you're going to make her sign a buyer agency contract after you've shown the house. You've screwed up. I didn't come here to tell you how to correct your screw up. But you're going to get a buyer agency contract signed by your sister. Don't do it on documents.
Right.
Do it on paper and pencil and have your sister date us. I never ever said this in my life. Because it's still wrong. It's still wrong if your sister wants to sue you. Assuming your sister never will sue you, and your MLS is never. See, the MLSs are going to ask you for copies of your buyer agency contract. You don't know that. The MLSs are going to ask you for copies of your buyer agency contract. And if they see a date on that buyer agency contract after the date you made the showing time appointment to show it, it's all recorded. Everything is recorded. Okay, so be careful showing a house without a buyer agency contract. The only reason you do it, yeah, and by the way, Zillow has this touring agreement. Who's seen the Zillow touring agreement? Good. Don't use it. You're not allowed to use it yet. Am I allowed to make that office policy? Yeah, don't use it. Here's why. It's against our office policy, but it's also because if you use it, you're an idiot. Because it doesn't require the buyer to pay anything. And you're gonna show them 5 houses, and they're gonna wanna buy one. And then they're gonna say, well, now we're ready to hire you. We wanna buy the house.
The listing.
And you're gonna say, oh, it's 3%. They're gonna say, no, we don't wanna pay you 3%. How much will you charge? 2.5. No, we don't wanna pay you. Your bargaining position is pretty lousy, right? They've seen the house, thanks to you. They wanna buy it, thanks to themselves. And they don't need you to buy it. They got nothing in writing with you, making you, there is no procuring cause if there's no cooperative compensation. Okay, so then maybe they call up the listing agent or their lawyer or someone, and you're left out in the cold and you got nothing for your time. You gotta be crazy to show a house to a buyer without a buyer agent contract starting now. Crazy. Okay, so I'm assuming you're not gonna be crazy. Right? I mean, maybe if it's your sister, you'll be okay. I guess you trust her, but yeah, we've had mothers sue sons and daughters in this business and vice versa. Okay, so all you have to do is the same thing you've done on all your buyer agency contracts up until now. Fill in where it says, with a seller represented by a real estate broker, that means they're in the MLS, you're gonna fill in 3%, I hope. If you're gonna fill in less than 3%, you're gonna have to deal with the problem if you get more than that. Because if you get more than that, you can't keep it. More from whom? Most likely the seller's broke in a cooperative compensation. But maybe the seller's even gonna agree to give it, okay? You can't keep it, you can't retain it. By the way, that's what it says down here. Broken, it's not only in red, it's in bold. But by the way, when you use these forms, they're not red, blue, black, they're all black and white. But they are in bold and not bold. So in bold, at the bottom of the first page of the buyer agency contract, in paragraph 2B, subparagraph 4, it says, buyer broker will not retain any amount greater than the broker's fee agreed to in paragraph 2B. And of course, the second part of 2B, 1A and B, the second part is for an unrepresented seller. What you all call, it's a 4-letter word, I don't use.
Dual agent.
Yeah.
Dual agent. 4%.
Not a dual agent, not to do a dual agent, not yet, not until you enter into a listing contract with the seller. It's, you can leave a seller unrepresented, we have a form for that, I didn't print it up for you, it's called the broker's fee agreement. We commonly call it the FISBO form, the unrepresented seller form. Yes,
I had a situation with so I'm already practicing of getting the buyer agency signed before I go into that. So he wouldn't sign it for 3% because he doesn't want to ever have to pay 3%. He'll pay 2.5% if so. If the time comes that I would find a listing that is offering me 3%, can I go back and have the number change with both of our initial
as long as he
signatures
agrees
next
to
to
it,
it?
yes.
Okay.
But I wouldn't, I hesitate to have that done after you've shown the house, but yeah, you can. You can, we'll be okay with it. An amendment, everybody's been teaching us. If you look at any of the seminars from NAR or from Keller Williams Real Estate International, they've had their people saying yes, but they make it sound easy. You can amend the buyer agency contract. But it takes 2 to amend the buyer agency contract. He would have to agree to it. Okay? And he may say, well, why can't I get that half? That's when you say, how about we split it a quarter each? Okay? He's still in the top negotiating position. Because if he realizes you can't keep it, it'll be his. Provided the mortgage lender allows you to do that. We're going to come back to mortgage lenders in a little while. Well, we're going to get there. So as you can see, there's this thing called an advance retainer. We've always had the ability to take an advance fee. I started as one of the only buyer agents in Pennsylvania in 1989, and I had my own real estate company, and all my agents, we started buyer agency while everybody else was a sub agent. And we would have buyer side, buyer agency contract. We would say, why are you making the buyer side a buyer agency contract? We say to get their loyalty. And we would charge the buyer $75 in 1989. They took out their checkbook and they wrote a check, not to us individually, to my company for $75. Did we need the $75? No. Why did we do it? It helped commit them. We thought that they were committed. Then, as 1995 rolled around, everybody else was being a buyer's agent. They weren't asking for $75. I just said, forget about it. Okay? Why are we going to waste time explaining? And then you have to decide whether or not the $75 would be credited to their eventual commission. If you do get a retainer fee, you can. But here, it does say it will be credited to the eventual fee. So if you end up getting 3%, you had 3%, you got 75, you'd have to give them back the $75. Okay? No big deal. So are there any questions? Let me see if I go to the next page of the buyer agency contract. Is there anything we need to cover there? No. So are there any questions about the buyer agency contract? Yes.
It's your listing. And a buyer calls you.
Your listing, right?
And the buyer calls, and a buyer calls you and says, I want to see it. And you say, you have a buyer's agent. No, I don't want to deal with the buyer's agent. I have to pay anything, but I want to see it.
Right.
What's the ruling on that? How do we handle?
Good. Well, first of all, I have to ask you what's on your listing contract. How much is the seller paying? Paying 5%, 6%?
Let's say it's a very difficult seller.
And he's only giving
I
3.
2.5%.
Okay, total. Are you willing to be a dual agent, work for both the buyer and the seller for a total of 2.5? It's up to you. Here at Coley Real Estate in Northampton, here's what I want to say to you. God bless Coley. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And if you're a capping agent, and you want to buy that refrigerator, you can do it. You want to work for 2.5%, you can do it. It's up to you. What I want you to do now, here's why I didn't coordinate this with Jim. I want you to try and be a doer anytime you're selling your own list. I don't want you to leave the buyer unrepresented. I don't think we ever did that, right? We never left the buyer unrepresented. We should always be a dual agent. There's 2 ways. You can let Jim be a dual agent and get someone else here to represent the buyer. Maybe give them a steak dinner and keep all the commission for yourself other than the cost of the steak dinner. You work it out internally, or you become a dual agent and you're a designated for the seller, designated for the buyer, you're a dual agent. I don't care how much I don't care whether you're getting a total of 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, whatever you're getting, you get. It's up to you. You can say to the buyer, no, I'm not doing it. And then they can go find another agent to represent them.
But if you're representing the seller, you're watching out for the seller's best interest. I mean,
If you took a 2.5% listing from the seller, I think you should be a dual agent for 2.5%, unless you can get the buyer to agree to pay you more.
First of all, what's the company policy on that? Are we allowed to take a?
Like I said, you are. As long as you're a capping agent.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Like the listing agreement.
We're gonna get to the listing. Let's see what the listing agreement says, okay? Let's wait till we get to the listing agreement to deal with this.
You can either be a dual agent or they represent the seller and be a transaction licensee.
I totally disagree with you.
Yeah.
I believe you're a transaction licensee for buyers and sellers, not for one and the other. You can't be neutral on one side. You can't be neutral on one side and represent the other side. That's that's what I've been teaching for years. Jim missed the memo. I don't know. Yeah, the only time I allow transaction licensee in my office, it's not about money. I don't care whether you're doing it for $1,000, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, not about money. The only time you're gonna be a transaction licensee in my world, and I have created the law, we didn't do that good of a job on it because the legislature screwed it up. But anyway, the concept of transaction licensee is usually an internal family transaction. Your old clients, the parents call you up and say, you know, our kids are selling us their ranch house, or we're selling them our colonial. Will you handle the transaction for us?
Right.
That's a transaction licensee. And you're gonna be neutral as far as the seller is concerned and the buyer. Transaction licensee means neutral. In fact, in the state of, you're gonna love this, in the state of Alaska, that's what they call a transaction licensee. They don't say dual agent, they don't say double agent. Double agent James Bond, right? Okay, they say you're a neutral agent. Because I believe that's what you are, you're neutral.
Cause I've had a listing contract. And then the niece wants to buy it.
Yeah.
And they've come to terms and everything else. I'm simply a transaction licensee for the niece. And I have a listing agreement where I represent the seller.
No.
I've done that.
No,
that
you
way.
should, no, you should become a dual agent, which is the same as transaction licensee, actually, for the niece too. You can't be for both of them.
Even if I already have a listing.
You
agreement.
see, when you become a dual agent, how do you have to treat the seller? Neutral. When you become a dual agent, how do you have to treat the buyer? Neutral. When you're a transaction licensee, how do you have to treat the buyer? Neutral. When you're a transaction licensee, how do you have to treat the seller? Neutral. With all due respect, what Jim said was, no, you're gonna represent the seller and you're gonna be neutral. You can't be neutral if you represent one party or another. It's impossible. It's also impossible to sell your own listing. I'm sorry, it's also impossible to buy your own listing. Because you're looking out for your interest as a buyer, and you can't look out for the seller. You gotta resign your agency, you're gonna buy your own listing. It's good to know, Tom. I had an agent, oh, we have a fun day, seasoned agent. She said, I'm sitting here with the buyer, we're writing the offer, and she asked me a question. I said, what house do you sell? She said, I'm selling my house. I said, well, you can't. She said, no, you said I can't list my own house, which is another policy we have. Can't list your own house. So she said, I listed it with someone else in the office. She said, I'm working with a buyer. She said, you never told me I couldn't represent the buyer when I'm selling my own house. Legally impossible. Legally impossible. Okay, yes.
Going back to my question, just extending a little bit, if I'm representing the seller and watching out for the seller's best interest, I want to sell that house. But on the other point of view, if you have testers out there, and the rule is that you have to sign with every buyer before you sell it.
No, that's not the rule.
Okay.
I didn't tell you the rule. Okay, maybe I did. So before you show a house to a buyer, you have to sign a written agreement with them, buyer agency contract, unless you are the seller's agent. Okay, so if you're the seller's agent, you can show it to them without signing an agreement. And the reason they came out with that, boy, this is, so they write the settlement agreement and nobody thinks about open houses. So after the fact, they kind of notated the settlement agreement to say agents sitting open houses where they already represent the seller don't have to sign an agreement with the buyer. And I just explained how that works to you. The rub comes if you're not the listing agent. If you're not the listing agent and you're sitting in the open house, then you should sign a buyer agency contract with the buyer, right? You're gonna make Jim a dual agent. You're gonna be a designated agent for the buyer. The listing agent is designated for the seller. Okay, and now you're gonna sign a buyer agency contract. The only question you have is, are you gonna fill in 0 or 3% on that buyer agency contract? And you need a little bit of information before you figure that one out. Yes.
Could you be a designated agent for the seller instead? If you're sitting in open house on, let's say you're on, and I know you don't want to talk
You
about
could.
these, but.
You
like,
could.
you're-
You could, but you'd have to get appointed on a change the listing contract. It says appoint additional designated agent. Or your name has to be on the original listing contract, making you a legal agent of the seller.
Yeah,
In
so,
which case, you would answer the question the same way I did if I said you were sitting your own list.
right.
If you are sitting your own listing, you're designated for the seller.
So in the team environment, you could have whatever policy you decide.
I recommend small teams to always represent all their sellers together and to represent all their buyers together. I'm not talking about how we divide up commission.
Yeah.
That's internal policy, maybe worked out between the team members and the contract they sign with each other. Okay, yeah, okay. All right, so any questions about the buyer agency contract? Yes, Jim?
What is commission 2.5 versus 3?
So I want to discuss, if you fill in a buyer agency contract with 2.5, you're okay. But if you get 3, you're gonna have to figure out what to do with that extra 0.5%. We already discussed that. We discussed it up
That's
here a
as
couple
far
of
as you
times.
got. You just said you have to figure out what you're gonna do with it.
Right, which by the way,
That's all you said.
if you read PAO,
You
by
said
the way,
you gotta figure it
okay,
out.
by the way, yeah, okay, there's 3 things that can happen to the money. Okay, I'll explain what those 3 things are that can happen to the money, the extra 0.5%. First of all, if you read on our Uber task force, we argued intensely. I argued for that money on the buyer agency contract going to the buyer.
Okay.
New Jersey's buyer agency contract specifically says it's going to the buyer. Delaware's buyer agency contract specifically says it's going to the buyer, although it's not going to happen much in Delaware, because they're pretty much doing away with cooperative compensation. But in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, we still have it. So I lobbied for it. So the compromise was we wrote in the guide, every one of these forms from PAR has a set of guidelines. There's a 37-page set of guidelines for all these changes. I think every one of you should listen to the PAR webinars if you haven't already listened to it. And you met Hank Luna and Casey Clausen. And every one of you should get this package. It's called, when I opened up this form, the first thing it said is, do you want the guidelines for all the changes? Here's all the changes. And when it gets to the directions on getting more money on the buyer agency contract, then you've agreed to, you have to work it out. Now, how do you work it out? There's three possibilities. Ready? Credit it to the buyer. How are you going to do that? Well, if we already deposited the check, which I'm telling our MCAs not to deposit the check, but we already deposited the check, then you got to write a check out to the buyer. And if you're breaking a mortgage company rule, I hope you're not. The only reason you would be breaking a mortgage company rule is if the buyer was already getting maximum seller assist. And we're going to distinguish between seller assist and seller paying buyer's agent's fee. We're going to do it a couple of times coming up. We're going to do it on the agreement of sale. We're going to do it in the listing contract. Stay tuned. It's really important, if that's what your MLSs are talking about. Yes.
Just a quick question. I know, in New Jersey, the buyer's agency contract is giving the buyer options of what kind of properties do you want the agent to show you? Ones where they're only.
Right, we don't do that. You can write that on the
That's
special
how
clause.
it is.
You can write it on the special clause in the.
That's all.
Okay, they also do it in Delaware in a way. They say, which county do you want to show us properties? And Delaware's only got 3 counties altogether. And if you leave it blank, it means the whole state of Delaware. Okay, yeah, but you're right, you can ask it.
Okay, that's fine.
But before you add anything to a contract, call that man up and ask him if it's okay to add those words.
Yeah, because you won't get by
It depends what they are.
Okay, so number 2,
Okay,
number 2 way.
number 2 way is you renegotiate your buyer agency contract so that you get to keep some or all of the money.
Not a cross out.
Number 3,
Did you already say? An addendum, not a cross out. Would you agree or disagree?
I don't agree, you can do it both ways.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, in fact, we didn't create an addendum that came, we changed the buyer agency contract addendum, called the change the buyer agency contract. But we didn't do what Delaware did, was it put on it, the amount of compensation is changed too. So you could write that in on the addendum in the Pennsylvania agreement, or you could just do a new buyer agency contract. My recommendation is a new buyer agency contract. And you can do the initial one too. That's, you said choice, use an addendum or use initials. I'm giving you a third one. Get a whole new buyer agency contract signed.
If it's wet signed, it can be backdated.
Yeah,
If
right.
it's DocuSigned, now it's new, and after the show.
Yeah, but your addendum's gonna be, you're gonna do your addendum on DocuSign too. Yeah,
okay, and the third way, third thing.
third thing, by the way,
The second
there
is
is a possibility you can't do any of these. The third thing is give the money, depending who overpaid it, give the money back to the listing broker, not to the seller. If it was cooperative compensation, the seller didn't pay. And then the listing broker can do what they want with it. Or if you got the seller to pay this extra amount, you can give it back to the seller. I don't know, I can't imagine any listing broker or seller turning the money down. But why would you give it to the seller or the listing broker if you can give it to your buyer? Right? So those are your choices,
Okay, let's move on.
all right? Are we done with the buyer agency contract?
Well, let's move
Ah.
on. We got 1 more left. We got all these
Okay.
contracts.
All right, now, can I skip? In your package is the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. I would like, well, I want to just read the paragraph. That says the middle paragraph on a non-exclusive buyer agency contract. Okay, The middle paragraph says the following. I'm not gonna bring it up. It takes me too long. Like sharing screen and all that. What it says is this. The first paragraph is the same and the third paragraph is the same. The middle paragraph says, in a non-exclusive buyer agency contract, you agree that you will work with a specific buyer agent for certain properties, but that you do not have to work with them, parentheses, that they do not have to work with you. If you don't like them, you don't have to work with them. On an exclusive buyer agency contract, you gotta keep working with the buyer you can't stand. Okay, there's a lot to be said for this non-exclusive buyer agency contract. And they do not have to work with you for every property you may be interested in. Contacting another buyer agent and using their services, this is your question. One of you two had this question. Contacting another buyer agent and using their services after you have been introduced to or been shown a property under the terms of this contract could mean that you might owe fees to more than one broker. Remember they can't go to another broker to buy the house that you showed them. Okay, now, I want everybody to, I'll take the question one second. I want everybody to pay great attention to the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. I think you're going to be getting maybe most of your buyers to sign this contract instead of the exclusive one. The only thing you're giving up is they can go use another agent to see another house. They can't do that with the exclusive one, but they still have to pay you 3%. And the cool thing about a non-exclusive buyer agency contract is it doesn't expire. So if you have a 1 week buyer agency property in Delaware, they're gonna run around signing 1 day buyer agency exclusive buyer, then they have to go back and renew it. Okay, okay. In Pennsylvania, use the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. The other thing you have, I don't have it on the screen, you can fill in addresses of properties that you're going to show them. But make sure you make full disclosure. It says, if you fill in only one property and you show them that property, it says if we show you any other properties, this contract applies. The buyer may be fooled into thinking that if I show you one property, this contract only applies to that one property, even if you show them others. Now it applies to all the properties you show them. I'm gonna take this question before yours. You don't have it?
No, so, okay, so what is stopping, let's say, at a fraud here, where the agent and, like, you get, like, just say, like, you had this contract signed,
Yeah.
now you had something. Like, another agent swoops in, well, actually, I showed them this property, right, like, what's stopping?
There's usually proof that you show the property, it's what you show, or something like that.
Okay,
So
so,
once you investigation, you make complaints to the association, you have to come to arbitration, I'll give you a hearing and all the evidence will come out. You might win.
but it's, so now, if we do that for multiple properties, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yes,
saying,
you
right,
So you can show the multiple properties with non-exclusive buyer agents.
right, I'm saying, but I'm saying, like, now, so that property that gets sold, let's just say a couple weeks later, another agent.
You can find out who your buyer was.
Okay, but.
And by the way, can I tell you something? This happens all the time in these classes, and it's wonderful. People like yourself ask questions that are all questions that have nothing to do with the new problem. A month ago, 6 months ago, 3 years ago, the same thing could have happened. What do you do? How do you find out they want the property? You find out the property sold. What do you do? What about fraud? It's an old question. I'm not spending a lot of time here on old questions. You get what I mean? Okay, not a new problem. Yes, hopefully you got a new problem.
Yes, if you have the non-exclusive buyer agency signed, then do you have to get an actual buyer agency signed? Like, is there ever a version?
You go all the way to settlement with the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. Yeah. Nothing. Yes.
Work if you're using a showing.
Showing what?
Like, it's showing, what if you're out of town and someone's showing a property to a friend, another agent?
Okay, I already had stuff that I was gonna get. But, no, I get this all the time. Okay. Who's showing the property for someone at Section 21 or someone here? Someone here. You have to make an arrangement with them, how you're gonna handle things if the buyer wants to buy that property, don't you? The buyer has already signed the buyer agency contract with whom? No, with whom?
The broker.
Thank you. They already signed the buyer agency contract with Keller Williams Real Estate. However, there's only 2 people at Keller Williams Real Estate that represent them, you and Jim, correct? So that showing me, by the way, it's old precedent. This is not new, you always have been supposed to do this. You're supposed to have that agent who's showing for you. Bring a change in terms to the buyer agent's contract. I can bring it up to you, you've got to go look it up, change in terms. One of the pre-written changes is add an additional designated agent. And the friend of yours here, she has to fill her name in and get the buyer to sign it so that they can see this house with her, because she needs a designated agent working for her. Now, how much money is she getting because she's doing that favor? She's such a good friend, she's not getting
8%.
I cannot convince my agents, it happened this morning again. On our we have an in-office private Facebook. Okay? For our office, one, for both of our offices. And the agent says, can someone show this property for me tomorrow at 2:00? I'll pay. No, you can't pay them. And well, to the extent that you can give the money to your MCA and they can pay them, no one is allowed to get paid for doing real estate activities except through their employee broker. But you know what? I got bigger things to be concerned about right now. Oh, yeah, it's correcting that age this morning. Okay? All right.
Okay.
So, yes. Any other questions on the now, any other questions on the non-exclusive buyer agency contract? Okay, it reads just like the exclusive buyer agency contract, except it doesn't have a term, doesn't expire, and they can see properties with other agents at other companies.